Hello, I'm Bob Ganzak. Welcome to MotivationU the Podcast. Welcome to the podcast. We are really working on leadership, motivation, and living that intentional life. And somebody that does that every day, and I've known him for a little over 20 years, is the mayor of Valdosta, Georgia, Mr. Scott Matheson. Scott's also an entrepreneur. We're going to get into that and some of his leadership style. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, Bob.
How are you, sir?
Good to see you. You're worth the drive.
You've got a little background here in Gainesville also. Share with us your trek between where you started your world and how you ended up in Georgia.
Wow. I'll give you just the before Gainesville. I was down in Orlando and I was pulling two jobs down. I was a loss prevention manager for the Kmart Corporation, and I was pulling down a foreman on a construction site because my buddy's dad had a construction company, didn't think his son could handle it, so he teamed us up together. My brother calls one day and says, "Hey, I just got accepted into law school at UF." He goes, I'm very intentional. I need a roommate. So I moved up and we moved into Point West apartments, the grad school apartments, and that the rest is history. I worked the two different Kmarts here as a loss prevention manager, and then radio found me. I walked out of the Kmart one night, and my dear friend Jerry Banta says, "I got work for you tomorrow." And years later, I said, "What did you ever see? Why did you think I could work in radio?" And his answer was, "I used to go to your Kmart parties, and I'd watch you hold court in Storytell, and I thought all along if I could put a Kiss 105 at the beginning of that and a Kiss 105 at the end of that story, I'd have something." So that was it, 34 years ago.
Wow. So
Here in town.
That was, don't make me do the math, Scott.
Yeah. 1987, I believe, he walked me in the door.
Wow.
I knew I was going to stick there because 38, 39 employees at Kiss 105 at the time, and my driver's license and Doug Gillen, the owner, no, his brother Jeff Gillen, were the only two licenses that could actually legally pull the boom box according to their insurance company.
Okay.
And you know DJs, you know the people in the radio business. None of them had clean enough driving records to do that.
So you're actually from
Cocoa Beach,
Cocoa
Florida.
Beach.
Born and raised. The first year they built Cape Canaveral Hospital, sure.
Oh man, that's a few weeks ago.
Yeah, 62.
What were some of your early year leadership mentors? Who came to you? Was it athletics, teachers, parents? What were the things that shaped your leadership as a youngster?
So if I'm speaking today, and I spoke on Monday to a youth leadership group, if I'm speaking today, I say be ready for anything. Okay. And be ready for everything. Your playground experience is going to help you in the real world. That's leadership if you're leading kids there in a game or otherwise. Back then, it was trying to keep up. Remember, it's Cocoa Beach. It's in the 60s. It's the space race, the space boom. I saw every Mercury, every Apollo launch. At 16, I stepped out in front of my Publix job to watch the very first shuttle be ferried in on the back of the 747. They started down at West Palm and cruised up the coast so that everybody could go out and see it. So every kid I'm competing against in school is the son of a rocket scientist. So an exceptional school system in the Brevard County schools. I was a middle-of-the-road student. I might have thought I was a middle-of-the-road student, but when you're competing against the best of the best and the brilliant kids that you're sitting down beside, it proved later in life that it was an exceptional education.
Kind of pushed you forward yourself.
And
experience. Drew you that way.
Yeah, but through real-life experience, you get in the middle of a room and realize I can hold my own. I can handle this project. I can. So you were prepped well for it, whether you knew it or not.
That's an amazing start. What were some of those leadership people that influence your life early on?
You don't want to know. So in 5th grade, we get like an intern teacher, and then he was our real teacher in 6th grade, and I had him again. A guy named Frank Martin. And why did I think he was cool? Here comes don't take notes on this leadership. I thought he was cool because he was a hippie teacher. He lived in his van the van had a water bed and a small fridge, and he moonlighted at the surf shop. So he was a teacher during the day, parked his van in the surf shop parking lot to live, and worked at the surf shop, and I couldn't think anything cooler. I said, what a lifestyle. He's free. He in 5th grade, believe it or not, they'd call DFACs on you now for something like this. He formed Outward Bound, which was a national program, an international program for grown-ups. But in 5th grade, he convinced Bob Fritz, the principal at the time, that we should do Outward Bound as a leadership challenge at that whatever the age you are at 5th grade. So 2x2 in canoes, he took us out to the islands that are around Freedom 7 Elementary with our jug of water, our Visqueen, our 2 matches, and we dropped for an overnight stay on the islands 2x2. Built our own fire, built our own shelter with the Visqueen, and again, they'd be calling the law on you nowadays if you took 5th graders out for something like that.
I've known you for a long time, and I see some of that probably affected you positively as a youngster, because you take the initiative. I mean, you're not afraid to push the envelope ever.
Yeah, so had nothing. There's the typical story. We had absolutely nothing. We lived on the beach, an unincorporated Cocoa Beach right near Patrick Air Force Base, when that was considered a beachcomber's lifestyle. That was not chic to be living there at the time.
Wow.
My dad faced bankruptcy when I was 2, and back then bankruptcy was real. They would hammer you, no second vehicle, no luxury anything. So we lived that lifestyle. That was a very independent lifestyle. When you have nothing but the 3 shirts and the 2 pants you rotate, you appreciate everything. So everything that's come into my life, I appreciate, and I know what it is to do without. So, and I don't live in I live in a need world, not a want world. So.
And again, your dad rebounded.
Yeah, he however he wanted to. He at 13. So my dad at 90 is still in my life, and we still talk every single day. He's facing health issues, and I'm going to miss him terribly here in the next year. So you've been through it. So at 13, when you know what it's like to be a boy at 13 and the challenges, he goes through transcendental meditation and transactional analysis classes down in West Palm. Took us with him. We stay in the motel. He goes and takes his classes. I almost didn't recognize him for 2 or 3 years. Hey, Dad, you said you're going to take us over to the Astros game. I don't choose to feel comfortable with that situation. So I had to adjust, but yeah, to have him in my life for 58 years is incredible. Still to this minute.
How did you get to Georgia? What was the trek from Gainesville, Florida to Valdosta, Georgia? Was there any stop in between, or was it just that hour and 50-minute ride, boom, there I am?
Jump off an air shift one night, and it's a neat story. The last intentional thing I did for that radio station was the grand opening of a computer store. And the grand opening of that computer store live remote was the very first thing a guy named Steve Spurrier did as he came into town.
Wow.
So there's the timeline. As he was entering, that was the first public thing he did as I was exiting town. And of course, what did he do there? He did 5 minutes and out as we were doing the grand opening for that place. And think of what a computer was back then too.
Wow. Yeah,
so that was it. And you're off one shift one night and you're on another shift in a different town the next night. I was hired to do middays, but they forgot to fire the midday guy, so I did overnights for about 2 months and then worked my way into that position. A month later, the program director and I formed a morning show, and I've been getting up at the crack of dawn. My alarm goes off at 3:50 every morning, and I've been doing morning radio for 34 years.
Yes.
31 years, sorry.
To share with our audience, preparing for this podcast here today was kind of intimidating to me, because I know the way this gentleman prepares for his morning show, and he's at the radio station really early, right? And a plethora of statistics and information and everything at your fingertips. It's like, you've never said this to me, but it's almost like you prepare for 5 hours to do 3 hours.
Sure.
And
Sure. Sickest feeling in the world is being an hour in and out of prep. So it's something I don't like to feel. I over prep. I go in with about 15 stories. Any one of them could take fire that morning, and that's when that's good radio. I usually line up 2 to 3 guests. I put 750 guests through that studio every year. And then, of course, you've got phone callers, you've got news. You're offering and orchestrating the total package each morning. That's to hold people's interest.
so we're assuming that people understand that Scott is the mayor of Valdosta and also an entrepreneur where he owns his own broadcast company, which is kind of a challenge in itself. What was your trek to become a broadcast owner?
Listening, everybody, even here, the Gillens and my buddy Jerry Banta, you just soak up everything you can in the business. And almost immediately I looked around and everybody in that building was more talented than me, vocally more talented, quicker wit. I had to quickly say, if I'm going to stick in this business or at least give it a try for a couple of years, I'm going to have to figure out what my market advantage is here. And I quickly realized again that they're pretty lazy. So I said, I'm going to outwork them all. I don't know if that's going to equate to talent. I don't know if that's going to equate to, I'm just going to outwork them all. And that's what I did. I stayed in that production room till 1 a.m, learning how to be a better editor than the guys I just watched. Vocally, I went and took classes with they had never worked as a voice coach, but they were a music coach. So I worked on diaphragm and some other stuff early on too. And all of it paid off. I put a 2-year limit on myself. Every 2 years, if it wasn't offering me something, I was a sharp enough guy to land on my feet in a different realm. So every 2 years, for 34 years, this business has offered me, the business of radio and marketing has offered me a new challenge, and I've loved it.
Drawing from that experience of reaching out and really developing your skills, how do you share that with, let's say, your oldest daughter, Kylie? How do you share that with her, and what have you tried to teach her as far as developing her own style as she grows?
She's an introvert.
Okay.
Whoops. She is absolutely wonderful. She's lived in an adult world her whole life, so you ought to see her relate to adults. Pleasant, courteous, respectful. That's the stuff. That'll get you everywhere, and then after that, just follow your passion. But she's also gotten the playground speech before too. Get your leadership skills from your running, from the dedication to her running as a cross-country runner that she is. See what motivates the friends around you to run a little faster, and just lead by example. So she's gotten them. She gets those leadership tips constantly, whether she wants them or not.
Well, it's coming from a good person too to be able to do that. Also,
Thanks.
When you made that transition from rock jock, because you were like the rock guy in Valdosta, and all of a sudden you make this transition to news talk, and I got to go through that process with you a little bit at that time.
You encouraged and pushed it, as a matter of fact.
What went on inside to make that shift?
I think you or a guy named Mike Lynn or somebody pointed out that I was already doing it. In a almost irresponsible rock format where you are attacking everybody, face jamming, calling. You're there to be pure entertainment, nothing else. I was still serving. I was still bringing in a medical expert. I was still bringing in a lawyer to give law tips. I was still treating it like kind of a variety show, just to hold everybody's interest in that. And that translated well. And then, of course, the day I got the town is the day I involved myself in that town.
Yes.
Because if you want the best piece of advice, it doesn't matter where you land, and this translates to millennials nowadays. It doesn't matter where you land in life, it's what you make of it. It really is. So I dove in to make the community better, dove in to make that radio station better. That's how I handled that. So again, I think it was a very easy transition. I didn't have to say, hey, what do they do in the charity world? Hey, what do they do in the governmental world? I was already involved in all that.
It's a different, when we talk about motivation, though, it's a different feedback that you get from a different audience. So as a rock jock, you're put up on a pedestal, and every time you go someplace, it's a party.
Yeah.
When you go to news talk, every time you go someplace, it's an issue.
Correct.
How did you How did you make that transition, and what was the motivation inside that helped you go through that process?
And remember, they celebrate you in the rock world for being irresponsible.
Yes.
That's what they want
We
to see.
spent some days in mediation with the courts, you and I.
Thank you, yeah. So that's again, easy transition. I don't know how to say that. I got involved in the town I lived in, a little town inside a town called Bremerton. I owned a house there, and this was kind of a realization. I owned a home there. The business I worked in, the radio station, was there. My bank was there. My bars were there. The Harvey's supermarket was there. So I started realizing, again, get involved in this town, make it better. So I stepped in and did 6 years on city council there, but this is a long, long time ago. This is 20 years ago. Did mayor pro tem for 2, built a water tower, built some sidewalks, built some other stuff that I was very proud of at the time, and then stepped out of that town to go live in the town of Valdosta, having left it better.
Okay.
And then, if you own a business and you decide to dabble in politics, that's not a good formula.
No.
That's for every decision you make in the political world, the best of decisions, 75 people cheer you and 25% of the people boo you and will never do business with you again when they want to translate into that business world. So I stayed away for a long time. I had a draw to get back into politics. I stayed away for a long time. And then just again, same thing. I put so much into that town for 30 years that I decided I was going to step up against 4 other guys, 5 of us in that mayoral race.
When you mentioned, now, is Valdosta, different articles I've read, 15th or 16th largest city in the state of Georgia?
Correct.
Which one is it? Is it
Doesn't
either
matter.
one? It's right there, right?
Right in there. We're one of 13 hub cities. So when I travel for Georgia Municipal Association and otherwise, we have a separate group, the Hub Cities group, and there's only 13 of us in that club. Mm-hmm. The cities that know they're the economic draw, educational draw, medical centers, jobs and otherwise. Our town, 35,000 people influx into that town every single day for work or medical treatment or shopping or otherwise, every day.
And if people don't realize this, Scott said there's a city inside of a city. Actually, there is a city, Bremerton, that sits inside, that is totally encompassed by the city of Valdosta on all sides. What are some of the dynamics and leadership that go on there as far as police and other individuals that, you're on one street, all of a sudden you're in Valdosta, you're back in.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges there?
Almost the same with the county. It was worse until they kind of uniformed. They went and incorporated what they called islands at the time that had popped up all over the place over the years. So they really do have a decent uniform boundary now for the city of Valdosta. But then there's still when I was involved in Bremerton, we called it the capital of Valdosta.
Okay.
Because it was inside the city. It's only 1 square mile. It's only about 950 for the residents. You're only doing a budget of about $1 million. So it was very good practice politics for me. It really was.
That's good.
What we did exceptionally for that 1 square mile is at one point during what's called a COPS grant program with the state, we actually had 10 police, 6 full-time and 4 part-time. That made it the safest little square mile on the planet. So we used to tout, good place to send your daughters to go to school and to live and otherwise. And then again, it was a microcosm of a community. It had bars, it had restaurants in that 1 square mile, had lots of residential for housing, had apartments, had a bank, had a supermarket, so that's kind of neat.
And it had a radio broadcaster as a mayor also, because
Sure did.
the gentleman that we bought the radio station from, Al Brooks, was the mayor of Bremerton, and
Go figure, where did I get that?
and it kind of goes. If you have questions, feel free to write them right in on Facebook Live. Send us questions for Scott or myself. We'll discuss those. We come to you on many different platforms. Today we're live on Facebook Live and YouTube, and then after this, the audio portion of it will be on a number of different podcast platforms like Apple Podcast and Google and Spotify and others. So if you have a question either about leadership or motivation or something that you want to learn more about Scott's time here in Gainesville, please don't hesitate to write that out. Okay, So this gentleman goes from being this news talk person, and first of all, let's jump back. Let's jump back to 9/11. One of the greatest leadership examples that I've had in my life is what you did on that morning. I was living in Ocala, and you were running a group of stations, not just in Valdosta. We had stations in Lake City, Live Oak, Tifton, Fitzgerald, Douglas, Georgia, and in Valdosta. And those planes hit. How did you bring that together, and what was the leadership cues that you could share with our audience that you utilized in order to make that smooth transition that day?
A couple of things. Calm. You're a broadcaster now that's not in, I was still in the rock stages
Yes,
at the time. So silly was out the window, calm and responsible, informative. Think of the internet back in the day as well. If you weren't logged in and you hadn't locked on to that stream that was being fed to you, you were not getting on. The whole world tried to jump on for information and just about locked down, shut down the internet. Back in the day, the infrastructure was not there. So we were lucky enough to have that for a steady feed. We were lucky enough to have enough audio and video feed coming into that station. We were lucky enough to, I think, have an AP feed as well.
Yes.
A lot of sources that we could pull from for credibility, that we could pull from so that you can broadcast. I think I did 10 hours straight that first day from the time of the report. And believe it or not, the report was my wife at the time just calling to say, I think a plane hit a building. That was our call-in line that she decided that was the way she was going to get a hold of me. Small plane, big plane, I asked, and we went from there. So 10 hours straight there, and obviously many weeks after that, where the world was trying to make heads or tails of it. And then pulling facts from places like the parent company down in Daytona, being about 1/2 mile from where they trained 2 of those terrorists to fly.
Right. Yes.
Embry-Riddle University right there. Mm-hmm. So it was just I'll say a special time. I got a couple of landmarks. The first Gulf War was a teaching tool for me. I'll come all the way back to Gainesville. I was a broadcaster doing overnights when the Gainesville murders were happening.
Okay.
So that was a very pivotal moment in how to handle things, how to handle informational updates, how to say sleep in groups and arm yourself and everything else that was the message of the day passed on by the Gainesville Police Department. And a lady named Sadie Darnell, by the way, that was I think she became sheriff here after a long time.
Your leadership style, though, Scott, at that time, I can remember I was driving up from Ocala to be here, and I talked to you on the phone, and you said, turn around and go home. You just stay there as our command center, watching. How did you convey that calmness to a lot of young people who had no idea how to deal with this?
So if you're talking about the staff in that building,
yes.
I couldn't do it all alone. So I knew I had to start assigning people to different aspects. You go sit at that computer and watch those internet updates. You go sit at the TV, and then they were a constant feed.
So that delegation.
Sure. Everybody had a role. Salespeople were called back in to help in that role as well. And you guys, you were in a whole different town, whole different perspective. The Embry-Riddle story was starting to unfold, so it really was fun for me to pull all that together. It was fun for me to have way more information than everybody else to convey to everybody. That was a fantastic time. And again, the second you mention that is the second I think of the Gulf War, second I think about the Gainesville murders, second thing, everything pivotal in life is handled the same way.
Because it's a strange thing as far as being a broadcaster. You're in a very competitive business. When a news event happens,
who's most credible?
It's tragedy and everything going on. I mean, the whole country was brought down by 9/11. Yet all of a sudden, that other part of your brain that is like, this is competition time. How do you balance that and still convey the competition to your team, yet, hey, we have to be classy with this also?
Yep. A little sense of urgency there too, because you've got to be the best, and you got to be the best fast. You've got to establish yourself as the go-to source, and you got to keep that coming, and you got to be credible, and you can't air one false false statement or update a report. So they all get caught up in that. They get caught up in knowing that this will establish you for the next decade as the information station in the event of an emergency. We're still going to all go back to entertaining, but when it comes time to get serious, people know that that's the go-to.
And that transition going back to entertaining, I remember that very well. It was difficult. We had many of meetings to say, hey, should we do this or should we not? When do we do it? How do we do it?
And that was about the time you guys spent about a calendar year trying to convince me that a news talk station was necessary. You guys badgered me at that point. I was very happy in the format I was in, and you took me down to Daytona and you showed me a guy named Mark Bernier and how he handled things, and you convinced me, and we built a little makeshift studio and launched.
We were getting older too, Scott. It's
you.
hard to be a 58-year-old rock jock. I mean,
doesn't seem to be. It's like, look around the country.
We have a question. Mayor, being a public figure, you understand the critics from your seat and adjust accordingly based on your leadership style. How do you communicate, encourage, and lead other public figures like law enforcement officers within your city to handle themselves and understand their leadership role within the community?
Oh, that's monstrously important. It's also become an adjustment for a year and a half to kind of draw that wall between mayor and radio guy, because again, I'm a conservative talk show host, and you're serving 57,000 people with varying views and otherwise. Easier for the public service aspect. They know that's what they got into that field for. All you're doing is trying to elevate that game. All you're trying to do is saying, when you do take that guy down, try and consider what happened the day before, the month before, the year before, with a little more compassion. In the city of Valdosta, I'll just take police. In the city of Valdosta, we're not, in the county you can be stormtroopers. In the city, you have to do community policing. You have to get out and know your neighbor, know what might be coming, know the trouble people, know what kid is acting out. So community policing is what I pushed in Bremerton with my little 1 square mile all those years before. If somebody's blowing through town, blowing through stop signs, bust them. If it's our people trying to get home, get them home. So it was odd to say it that way, to give varying degrees of the law, but that's what you got to do in a community. You're a tight-knit community. They're living there the day they go into jail, the day after they get out of jail, they're still living there. So you want it to be cohesive and tight-knit, and so it's different for everybody. Fire, I don't need to do much there. They're heroes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back, I want to explore the mayoral side of Scott's life and some of the challenges that he's had, and maybe even touch a little bit on the Azalea Festival last year in 2020. And that's a big leadership thought. So we'll be right back.
When you're a member of the Gator Nation, you know what it means to never back down. Meldon Law has been a proud supporter of the Gator Nation since 1971. Two forces that won't back down. As the old saying goes, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Welcome back. Scott, it was fun. Scott, we were watching the ads that you saw as they were being played, and Scott started thinking when the Meldon Law ad came on of how he used to get kicked off the press row at the Gator games, basketball games, for cheering for the team. So you are a Gator fan.
Oh, sure, through and through, my entire life. I've made an interesting transition, though. I've carried, on my radio station, I've carried Valdosta State University sports, football, basketball, baseball, and a lot of softball for 25 years. Yeah. So I stopped wearing the orange and blue tennis shoes to the ball games and fully converted, unfortunately, into red and black.
Yeah,
that is VSU. But that's a Division II powerhouse football program and great in other sports as well. I'm fully immersed in them and got my dream. I got into the business 34 years ago to do sports broadcasting. Never got there. And in 2018, two longtime broadcasters that I had calling the games retired. And the athletic director said, who are you going to get to call this season in the 2018 season? And I said, I'm going to do it. So Spencer Van Horn, one of my employees, and I called the entire magical season, 14-0, national championship, flew out with the team to McKinney, Texas, and so I got to live the dream for 1 year, then decided I was going to run for mayor. You can't be on the air for that period of qualifying, so I couldn't do it again. But I got my 1 year, and I retired undefeated.
So that 1 year was kind of important also because you had a little bit of ties to the Gators in that world also from the head coach.
Yeah, Kerwin Bell. Yeah. So Kerwin was in his third year, and it was time to deliver. Mm-hmm. He had a one round into the playoffs in his first year. He had a miserable 5-4 year the next year, and then it was kind of put up or shut up, and man, did he put up. With his son calling the ball as the offensive coordinator, with a quarterback named Rogan Wells that was unbelievable, with a couple of running backs he pulled out of Miami. We were something to behold, and set an all-time NCAA record of all divisions, above 2 Alabama teams, an SMU team, the June Jones run and gun teams of Hawaii. We did a point per snap. We were such a high-scoring force, averaging about 50-something points a game, that the actual per snap average was over a point. No program had ever reached a point per snap.
Wow.
And that program was that prolific under Kerwin. And I'm thinking he's going to do the same with Western Carolina, which I think he just landed at as head coach again.
That's wonderful. Great guy, too.
Yeah, sure.
A wonderful person. A lot of our people here in Gainesville just remember him and the happy memories that he brought to the people.
Even bigger joy. We'd call the game and then have to scramble down the field, and I got to host the TV show as well that we do, a 30-minute TV show we do afterward. Player interviews, Kerwin interviews, and otherwise it was great.
That's why. And also we've had as we talk about leadership, you and I both have had the opportunity because of Valdosta State to meet some incredible leaders, not only in athletics, people like Chris Hatcher, the former coach, people like David Dean, who's a good friend of ours, and Dr. Zachary and some other people. That small community with a college like that really influences your leadership style.
Ron Zachary. I'm president for 6 years of that university and advanced that university light years. He is one I call friend, and then I call mentor. And his leadership style, his calm, his Italian ways, all were a big inspiration for me. I probably modified at that point watching him for a long period of time.
A wonderful person. Let's tackle this mayoral side of your world, because there's been some things that have happened. You became mayor in what year?
So, I got sworn in January 8th of 2020.
Yeah.
But it started before that. I had to go to a runoff, and then the runoff had to go to county provisional ballots. On that Friday when we all gathered at the Board of Elections and county provisional, and they said, congratulations, you won. I woke up on Saturday to a phone call saying, hey, mayor-to-be, before you get sworn in, we got a 7.5 million gallon sewage spill, which is substantial for any size town. We had an alert system that was left offline, and flow went for almost a day and a half, and we had to measure all that flow as contamination. So I had something from day one. We had a brand new sewer system. We thought we had that problem behind us. Sewer systems are crumbling all over the country because they were all built 60, 70 years ago. Ours is now a modern, state-of-the-art force main system that is something to be admired. But I had to deal with that. I had to deal with 13 counties here in Florida where we were sending that poo to, and I had to hold a water meeting with them almost immediately. Learned while I was in the mountains right after that election, taking a week to myself before launching into that world, that we lost our kind of transit system. It was something that was a spillover from the county that kept people moving about. Lost it. We're not going to have, I thought it was going to be in place till October. Had to deal with that. Then I got sworn in January 8th. Had a coaching controversy in town that divided the town something fierce. Walked right into COVID in March. Had to start figuring out COVID. There was no game plan, no roadmap for that. So I was lucky that we had an Air Force base in town, and I'll explain why. We had an emergency management director who we relied on to coordinate. We had the city and county. I was scrambling my education. We had a great Department of Public Health that was housed right there, that covered 13 counties, but housed right there, that was a good guidance. We had our medical center, which is exceptional, South Georgia Medical Center. But why did I say Moody Air Force Base? Because our fighting forces live in a pandemic world every day, yes, because they're global. Mm-hmm. So with them in the discussion, now talking about a pandemic being not as as scary a thing as you thought, just follow the roadmap, listen to the science, make good decisions. They were invaluable too. So leadership skill, to sit in a room with all those people. I'm not a medical expert. I'm not a pandemic expert. And listen. And then when it comes down to them saying, what are we going to do, Mayor? You make your best decision based on everything you just absorbed in that noggin of yours. And guess what? We moved beautifully. Mm-hmm. We moved just in fantastic fashion. Our numbers stayed down. They were manageable. We never overwhelmed our hospital. It was a beautiful team effort, and I'll forever remember that when we talk about major events.
Those events. Cities all have challenges, right? Sure. Every city does. Valdosta, you mentioned the football coach situation, and that was played out on social media, in the newspaper, on radio stations. Valdosta High School is the winningest high school football program in the country. And a number of years ago, ESPN even named the Wintersville, USA, beat out Green Bay and some other places to become that. And we had some challenges there that were divided within on the board. How did you navigate that? I don't want to get into what the challenges were, but how did you navigate that as a leader to keep people talking?
So what people used to tout as a weakness, you're not from there. You're not passionate about the Lowndes school system. You're not passionate about the Valdosta school system. That neutrality helped me, Bob.
Okay.
When a town is naturally divided, county and city school system, which is very rare in this world anymore, they've all since merged. I wish ours would merge as well, and that's going to make me very unpopular to say, but it's necessary. You wake up to a natural divide of loyalties, division of city-county, division of. So it was kind of neat that I didn't have a dog in the fight, that I wouldn't make emotional decisions based on my loyalties, and I'm a Wildcat and I'm a Viking, and I think that helped a lot.
Well, the purpose for this program, as we were talking before the show, I really believe some of our greatest leaders are right here in our own communities.
Oh, sure.
It's the people that live next door to you, that are running the small business or the larger business or the medium-sized business in your own community, and getting people to do things that they never dreamed they could do. When you start looking at some of the things that you've been challenged with, I go back to that Azalea Festival of last year. A huge event, one of the biggest events of the year in Valdosta, and you make a decision at the midnight hour because of a pandemic.
Wow.
Talk to us about what went into that decision, what was your leadership thought, and how did you get people to buy in?
So that's a March festival, and that's when we first heard COVID-19 in February. We were scrambling in education. We were ignorant to everything about it in March, and that thing starts to come up. It's a year in planning. Every year, 30,000 people are going to come through that park in a 2-day period. We're at a couple of meetings on how to move. They just shut down the 2 school systems. I get to the house and I say to my wife, and it starts Friday. This is Thursday night. It starts Friday. I get to the house and I said, something doesn't feel right. And I'll try not to get emotional because this was a whole evening. I'm going to go down and talk to my friend Aaron. Aaron Strickland was the director of that festival. I said, I'll be back in 30 minutes. 3.5 hours later, I walked back into that house. I sat with Aaron. We agonized over it. We walked the park because everything's set up. Every booth.
Every vendor. Everybody
vendor's
was
in
there.
town. The frisbee catching dogs are there.
Everything.
Yep. The whole deal. And people, a board and a group of volunteers that number probably 75 in all their effort.
And how many people on a normal Azalea Festival travel through that over the weekend?
Yep, I think the number is always 30,000. You're right. In a 2-day period of time, from 10 in the morning until 6 at night, it's about 30,000.
So it's a big event. There's a lot of people that are depending on this and planning on it.
In very close quarters, too.
Yeah.
So here we were. It was almost luck and a little bit of listening, but you shut down school systems. The state comes out with their first round of slowdown, and I'm there standing there on a Friday telling these people that you've just planned for something for a year. Twice they asked me to make the decision for them, and I said, I will not. You call your board. This is your effort. I'm giving you best guidance. I said, I'm telling you what the medical people told me 5 minutes ago. I'm telling you how we moved on the schools. I'm telling you that a neighboring city, neighboring county, Doherty County, probably about an hour and a half away, was at the time the hot spot in the country.
In the whole country.
In the entire country.
Albany, Georgia.
Yep, they had 2 funerals and a wedding that they all attended and then spread it to that entire town, and people were dying. People were lined up in their hallways at their medical center, in hallways on gurneys. It was terrible. So with that knowledge, 3.5 hours later, with their full board, we called their full board to the place, a 6-5 vote with all that knowledge shut that festival down. I thanked them. We went home. We had people angry. I can't believe you're shutting down the festival. A month later, they're saying, oh my God, we dodged a bullet. We could have been that hot spot. Because again, they come from all over. They come from multiple states to that festival. They come from multiple counties to that festival. We would have been inviting in disaster.
And at the time that decision was being made, a lot of business people were like sloughing off the COVID, the whole. My boss was, and I even shared the story. I'd been on the radio with you in the morning, and you had shared that story with me, like on a Friday. And Monday, I took that to my meeting, and my boss said, "There's nothing going on. I mean, it's
Be over tomorrow."
Yeah.
We moved that way though. Remember, we said we're going to shut it down for 2 weeks and see how it goes. And then we said the word May, and people all yelled at us, going, "You can't keep this going into May." A year and a half later,
we're still.
Oh my gosh! And here we go again. I did 3 straight medical meetings yesterday. I did our Department of Public Health, Georgia Municipal Association, and the South Georgia Medical Center meetings. So here we go again. Wednesday we made it mandatory mask for our 577 employees to enter our buildings for work. So we haven't gone mandatory for visitors yet, but we put up signs yesterday that said strongly suggested. Mm-hmm. But our employees we can control, and we're going to keep a healthy workforce because we're in a service industry. We have to keep the toilets flushing. We have to keep so everything that you rely on us for every day, we have to keep a ready workforce to keep all that going. So we're getting out ahead of it where we might have been a step behind it last year. We're going to make sure we're out ahead of it this year.
Well, that decision you made with the board and the Azalea Festival, nobody knows about that. I mean, because it didn't become a tragedy, because you made a decision that avoided a tragedy. Can you imagine what would have happened if you didn't do that after Albany had their problems over in Doherty County, and then the neighboring county of Lowndes would have a similar or a larger challenge to that, because 30,000 people coming through is more than a funeral, and it spread like wildfire on that funeral. That was a huge decision to be made.
Yeah, because it was going to be at a very concentrated period. 2 other points I made. We're a hub city, so 35,000 people come from surrounding counties. We're right on the Florida border, so they come up from Florida counties as well to go to work every day or to seek medical attention. So we had that challenge in COVID. We're an interstate town as well. Multiple exits on the interstate, so come shop, come gas up, come do everything before you head into Florida. We were having to walk a slightly different walk because, again, we were being brought the disease as well. We could control ourselves, neighbors, we can distance, we can fist bump, but it was showing up uninvited every single day in our community.
So Scott is mayor of Valdosta, Georgia, and in January of this year, Valdosta, Georgia became a huge focal point in our national elections, in the world. When we had a runoff for a senator, and the President of the United States at that time decided to make his first campaign to help support that in Valdosta, Georgia. What was that situation like as mayor? And I don't want to give the spoiler alert here, but you didn't even go to the speech.
So I had a Christmas parade to run. No, that was an easy decision. The president had me up to the White House twice. I got to go up for an economic summit, and I got to go up, believe this, for the vaccine summit. When they introduced the vaccine, I was one of 10 elected officials across the nation to be in the Eisenhower as every scientist, every FedEx CEO, every single Moderna, everybody was there to talk about what it took to get in 10 months' time a vaccine out. So as we sat there and heard about what it took to put the vaccine together and to put everybody's mind at ease about a vaccine, here it goes. 90% of that vaccine was already mapped. They pulled it off a shelf. All they had to do was map the last 10%. So before you think they went to a petri dish and said, let's create a vaccine, most of it was in place. Coronavirus has been around for a ton of years. And so they got that last 10% ready for distribution, ready to survive inside your body, ready to be stored for growth. They debuted freezers to us there. They talked about logistically how they were going to move it. Once Pfizer and Moderna were the first two, Johnson & Johnson came much later, but they were there. They talked about how they were going to distribute. They put a four-star general in charge of one part, Alex Azar in part of the rest of it. He was considered the architect of this whole thing. It was the most amazing thing I've sat through, and remember, I was born in the space race. What I thought I was watching was them putting a man on the moon. It was amazing to hear it. It was amazing to be a part of it. Donald Trump opened it and spoke to us, and there was about 95 press on the back of the platform behind me. He got done, and about 90 of them left. Left 5 to spend the next 3.5 hours there with us to hear about how this amazing thing was put together by that administration. I couldn't have been more proud to be a part of it. There was Democrats, Republicans, scientists, 1,000 others in that room, but they for the national good, they all put it aside and got this thing done. So again, to have all that, to have met him in the campaign trail, he came down for a Sean Hannity taping in Valdosta. I had to put the audience together, 200 people in a small room before he went over and did a large rally. When he came back to town, I had a Christmas parade to run. I was the mayor waving in a Christmas parade, and by no stretch, not even a question, was I going to go out to an airport and be part of a large rally when my town was throwing a Christmas parade. So, yeah, you're correct. I did not go.
Leadership 101.
Yeah, I'm here to serve those people.
It's not about us.
Mayor of Valdosta is a non-denominational. I'm a conservative. Yeah. A little bit of hippie in me from growing up in Cocoa Beach. That makes me a little.
And a 5th grade teacher.
and somebody I admired in 5th grade. And so all that says I'm probably closer to libertarian, but no, I'm serving that town. I'm 31 years in that town. I recognize that revitalization has to happen. It's a 150-year-old town. We got to be knocking down about 35 houses a year in a weed and seed type program. Transportation, we didn't have transit in that town.
Yes.
That was my platform for running. 31 years, I had to listen on my radio shows to people saying, we're going to get transit done, and never doing it. For a variety of reasons, Bob. One, a $20 million investment. One, the haves saying we're not going to do it for the have-nots, and a lot of atrocious
things.
Rationale,
yes,
yeah.
Unfortunately.
So for the modern day, I said, I'm going to do microtransit. I looked at 3 programs. One was called Uber and Lyft Subsidy, one was called Microtransit, one was On Demand. And the group that showed up before us to present for On Demand was a group called VIA, and you've never met a more impressive bunch. Look into their culture,
Okay.
because every time 4 people show up in a Zoom call with me, they're equally as impressive as the last 4. The group is called VIA. They're in over 200 cities worldwide. In Canada, I saw them in New York before I ever knew who they were. And they ran a turnkey transit system. They produced a turnkey transit system. We got 5307 grant funding to cover 80% of the operation. And we are currently we launched April 27th of this year, and we're 16,500 rides in right now.
Wow.
We're averaging over 300 a day. We put in an appropriation to Senator John Ossoff for money to expand the fleet. We need 3 more cars this year, 3 more vehicles next year, and we think we can do 450 a day. That is moving. Here's the math: 16,500 people. Let's say average sale is $100, because when they get picked up, they're going to Walmart, they're going to a medical center. So let's just say the average expenditure is $100. In 3 months' time, that's closing in on $2 million of economic impact, just because I moved them and their money around.
That's great.
So forget quality of life issue, forget all that stuff. That's the reason we did it. We wake up 16,500 rides in, and we're in pretty good shape.
Knowing, because I live there in Valdosta myself, and knowing the people in town and some of those petty, especially the battle between Lowndes High School and Valdosta High School.
Yeah.
So you chose the Wildcat colors for the vehicles.
It's my city. Yeah, without hesitation. And I even said when we were doing an interview, I think Theresa Boyd interviewed me about it not too long ago. And I said, I can understand no self-respecting Viking's going to hop in that vehicle.
Yeah.
Because we did. We made them, they look like Pittsburgh Steeler colors,
Yeah.
obviously. It's black and gold.
Scott, you're leading the city, you lead a company, yet there's one of the things that really impresses me, probably the most about you, is the man you are at home. Your family, your 4 girls, 3 daughters, and a lovely wife. How do you juggle that between a full-time job in radio, being the mayor of the city, and then still having that grounding effect, be the man inside the house with your family?
Because it's the place I want to be. Yay to everything else. Thank you for the honor of letting me try and lead this town in the right direction. Thank you for a great career, Bob, in radio. You had a lot to do with that. But that's where I want to be. I want to wrap up a dinner, I want to wrap up a fundraiser, and I want to get home and have the joy of the 2 young ones running and leaping on me, and Kylie's big smile, and my beautiful wife Rebecca. So that's where I want to be. That's my joy, and that's
those
my
3 girls. They just your kids are just it's just an incredible thing when you see that in your eyes.
Yeah.
Like I see right now.
Yeah, that's it. Because you just placed me there. They're why I do everything to make that town better for them. You say that, and that's the reason. But you also had to observe for 31 years what that town needed, and I'm thrilled that I'm in a position to make a difference there.
Okay. Last couple of minutes, share with me just quickly some of your greatest victories, the obstacles that you've overcome, and the lessons you've learned as a leader.
So transit was my biggest victory, and I think it will remain so. We've done a lot of good, and we've moved a lot of things forward. It's fun to go to a ribbon cutting for a rebuild on a CDBG house to give somebody a better quality of life. But that transit was how do we do it? How do we do it affordably? And the more advice you get from the regional development people is get in cheap and make it disposable, because transportation 5 years from now is going to be autonomous vehicles and look a lot different. Buses would have been damning, bus barns, fuel, everything else would have been damning to a city our size. So the on-demand transit, to have a bunch of Sienna vans running in concert with each other all over that town, provides the exact service that they were crying for the 31 years that I listened, and at an affordable price. With that return on investment I just told you, the only thing the city's on the hook for with that 80-20 grant that we live under is $215,000 annually. So if I'm touting it in 3 months' time, almost a $2 million return on investment, I can now sell that thing every single year and to everybody that questions me about it. Why are you doing that? Why are we doing that? How
you have a
expensive
track
is that?
record now.
that is completely defensible, and I sell it to every group and organization I talk to. So
that's victories. How about some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome? Just touch on one or
it's a very divided country we live in.
Yeah, it is.
So even as a nonpartisan post, I'm a conservative talk show host, and I probably brought a lot of that on myself. I knew what I was up against, and people would record the show, and for every word they would say, "How can you say you're serving the full town?" So people stepping up to battle you who have never once met you, have never shook your hand, have never looked you in the eye, have never shown up at a fundraiser to fight the fight with you, to raise the money with you ever, are now telling people they're experts on you, and this is why we should not listen to them, and this is why this bum should not be our mayor. And the divided world has made it so you are truly one arm behind your back, half as good, and you can't understand it, especially when their objections are exactly what you're working on that day, but they just forgot to ask. They forgot to ask, so I think you passed me on the way to the podium to say you didn't like me.
So tell the audience, to wrap this up, what one lesson has just stayed with you that you've learned?
Oh, it's a
Leave
new
them with the thought.
Yeah, it's a new one. Be ready for anything. That is my cemented philosophy. If you are a CPA, you can dive into the books and you can keep yourself updated and take continuing education and be the best CPA you can. In the world that I'm living in now, I'm drawing from playground experience. I'm drawing from leadership experience under a Bob Ganzak and what radio's taught me in a very ego-driven business. You got to stroke egos and hire and fire and hurt people's feelings. So it's be ready for anything and find your leadership skills and hone your leadership skills absolutely everywhere you walk in life, including how you lead your family, including how you work and interact with people at work. What I face every day takes every bit of it, and because everything's different. One person walks in and says, somebody keeps walking into my house. The next person walks in and says, you're spilling sewage into a creek. So it takes every bit of it.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you being here. We'll have to have you back. For our producer, Evan Miller, I'm Bob Ganzak, and this is MotivationU the Podcast.